There is a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area we call the Twilight Zone. Welcome to the Road to Concord and a special edition. Yes, we're going to be going there today. We were supposed to have a lesson today about, I think, the judiciary and the Constitution and the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers. But of course, no. We have a special guest today called Dr. Evil, and I think he's taken over the show. So without further ado,
It's
I'm
not
going
Dr.
to turn
Evil
the show
today.
over to Dr. Evil, who will entertain you for the next 2 hours or so. So good luck. I do suggest that you put on your 5-point harness, buckle up, buttercups, because this is going to be a rough show today. And yeah, I expect a strike on YouTube. So we'll see how things go today.
That is my head, Natasha. The Twilight Zone. No, I am not going to be Dr. Evil today. I can't do Dr. Evil today. There are too many fireflies going off in my head. First, real quick, housekeeping. I did want to do that show on Federalists. I want to teach on the judiciary, but we have to push that back for a week. Yahweh willing, we'll do it next week. And I'm going to have to expand your homework assignment just a little bit. You need to read Federalists number 78 and number 79, both of them. 79 is easy. 78 is a little longer. Got to read them both. I'll go over that in a blog post. We'll get that out to you, but hopefully you'll catch up, do that. We'll mention it on the top of the next hour and at the end of the show again. But it is important that we do this class. But for today, wow, man, where do I start? If you've been following my blog at all, I have been probably looking like an unhinged lunatic to people who don't know me. I am fit to be tied with what's going on in the courts right now. Folks, this nation is in a civil war. It's a hot civil. We're not talking about a cultural war. We're not talking about a political war. We're not talking about a war with the legal courts and everything. We are in a hot civil war. It's asymmetrical warfare. I'm not going to have time to explain all this to you today. This is going to be a very disjuncted show. It's going to be all over the place today. I have no way to put all of this in my head in order at this moment. There's too much that's even bombarding me. But what you have is, it's known as asymmetrical warfare. It's when you have somebody who's really weak taking on, it's David against Goliath. David against Goliath was asymmetrical warfare. So, but no one sees this. And you never see asymmetrical wars coming until it's too late. And that's because everybody thinks that the next war is going to be like the last one. So we're all looking for Iran, Iraq against counterterrorism, et cetera, maybe counter guerrilla, anti-insurgency, what they call coin. The military would call coin wars. Like Vietnam was an anti-guerrilla war, but it ended with a stand-up fight against the regular North Vietnamese army. Everybody's looking for World War III using conventional weapons. But folks, that's not how it's going to be fought. That's not how it's being fought. It's being fought with information and censorship and intelligence and psychological warfare and manipulation. It's being fought, quite honestly, with Operation Mockingbird and Project MK Ultra. And you're seeing it everywhere. And most people they're seeing the effects of this war, but they're not seeing the war as what it is. So I'm quite honestly, I'm fighting mad right now. There is a judicial assault on the United States Constitution. That's most of what we're going to talk about today. And it is, I've never seen anything like this before. I've known it's coming. If you've read my blogs for years, if you've known me for a while, I've been telling people this is coming. We're dealing with domestic enemies. And I do mean enemies to the Constitution of the United States. to the point where I now think it's reached treason, constitutional treason. And I know we're going to be talking in terms today, or at least I'm going to be talking in terms today that most people are like, Joe, you're going overboard. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. It's just that the vast majority of the world is stuck in normalcy bias. You cannot, and I don't mean necessarily you in this audience, but the average person cannot fathom the ramifications of what it means to accept the truth of what I'm going to say today. It'll overwhelm them. So there are going to be like the scantily clad little girl in the horror movie, and she's just going to sit there with the monster standing over her back, drooling on her shoulder, and she's going, he'll go away, he'll just go away, he'll just go. No, he's going to eat you, woman. She just can't face the monster in the face and deal with it. Most people are sheep. And that's what we mean by sheep, because that's how they react to these things. They just pretend like it's going to go away. And they literally become blind to it. They can't see it. But I see it. And I remember my oath of office. You know, when I swore into the military, there's no expiration on that date to protect and defend the United States of America, the Constitution, from foreign enemies and domestic. And we are in a hot civil war. People just don't see it. Now, we're going to be talking a lot about the law today and the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer. But guess what? For the purposes at hand today, I'm something even better. I am the perfect person to discuss the things we're going to be discussing today. I'm a philosopher with knowledge of history. Yeah, I know, philosophers, you people all deal with theory and the what ought to be rather than what is. You know, you're not realists. Well, that's exactly where we need to be today. We need to be focused on the ought, the way it should be, the way it's supposed to be, the ideological foundations of this nation, of law, of a whole bunch of different things. That's my wheelhouse. And I have a military background. I'm a historian. I'm perfect to see what's going on. It's probably why I'm one of the few people seeing it. And up until late yesterday afternoon, I was so frustrated that nobody else seemed to be seeing this at all. And then after that, and I mean whack-a-doodle Fruit Loop Judge Boberg or whatever his name is, after his little spat, I mean, all of a sudden, everywhere I saw people starting to catch on. They still don't realize this is an actual war. They still think that this is a judicial, insurrection of sorts. That's because they're not tying the pieces together. Now, I have a serious question for you. If you have been one of those ones who throughout the years thought your conspiracy theorist friends were Fruit Loops, have you changed your opinion in late, recent months? Because in case you haven't been paying attention, the score right now is conspiracy theorist 37. You're Gus, you're kind of nuts and you're a whack-a-job 0. We've all been being proved pretty much correct. The only ones I think are in the losing column with that conspiracy stuff are the flat earthers and the we didn't go to the moons. And if that's, if you're one of those two folks, you can still shoot the laser beam off the reflector that was planted on the moon, which proves we went to the moon. And it actually kind of proves that the world is round too. But what we're going to be dealing with today, legal matters. The political left in this country, they're just one division of the enemy that is attacking this country. And this is one of the reasons that we don't see this as a civil war. Let me go here. I'm going to take you to a post. This is on the road to Concord. This is the scaffolding is coming down. I want to read this again. We've read this before. This is a quote. It's a quote from Woodrow Wilson, where he's designing his deep state to take over this country. Woodrow Wilson wrote a blueprint for how to take over the United States of America, a revolution, a serious revolution, how to replace the Constitution with an oligarchical bureaucracy. And that's what we have right now. That's what we're fighting. We are fighting a nation within our nation and a government within our government. We call it the deep state. The deep state is the real world, real life realization of Wilson's battle plan. And he writes, and remember, he's writing kind of figuratively. It's an allegory, excuse me. He says, well, he means progressives, are architects in our time. And our architects are also engineers. He thinks that they're political scientists, which, by the way, he's the reason that term got coined. And that's why you have political science, poli-sci, in the universities. It's not about the science of politics. It's about the science of mass manipulation. He says, well, we are architects in our time, and our architects are also engineers. We don't have to stop using a railroad terminal because a new station is being built. In other words, we don't have to stop using the U.S. government that we've inherited because we're making a new one. We don't have to stop any of the processes of our lives because we are rearranging the structures in which we conduct those processes. In other words, we don't need a violent revolution. What we have to undertake is to systematize the foundations of the house, then to thread all the old parts of the structure with the steel, which will be laced together in modern fashion, accommodated to all the modern knowledge of structural strength and elasticity, and then slowly change the partitions, relay the walls, let in light through new apertures, improve ventilation, until finally, a generation or two from now, the scaffolding will be taken away, and there will be the family in a great building whose noble architecture will at last be disclosed, and where men can live as a single community, cooperative, as in a perfected, coordinated beehive, not afraid of any storm of nature, not afraid of any artificial storm, any imitation of thunder and lightning, knowing that the foundations go to the bedrock of principle, and knowing that whenever they please, they can change the plan again and accommodate it as they please to altering necessities of their lives. Woodrow Wilson, What is Progress, 1913. What was he saying? He was saying we can infiltrate the Constitution and the various organizations within our government and slowly subvert them to serve our purposes until eventually the old system will just fall apart. And you'll see that we have revolutionized the country from within without having to fire a shot. Why did he have to do that? Because they were too weak to fight this revolution, and because the American people wanted nothing to do with it. That's why he went to what he called progressivism. He realized, he said in his writings, we've read them on this show, that he realized the American people would not revolt the way he wanted them to. In other words, you cannot have a Russian-style revolution. But he was wanting to get to a socialist form of government, and we now have it. Now, the left is going to pretend the politicians, they're just one division of this beast. The politicians are one head of Hydra. Okay? Rush used to tell you that that's politics is Hollywood for ugly people. It's amazing how well Rush understood what was going on, but never wanted to explain it to you in terms that connected the dots. So the politicians are going to tell you that they are trying to protect the Constitution and the rule of law. The Democrats, and a lot of Republicans as well. The left wing, the fascists, the communists, the socialists, the secular humanists, by whatever flavor or whatever presentation they give themselves, the ice cream is totalitarianism. I don't care what flavor, Democrat, Republican, progressive, independent, libertarian, I don't care. If your goal is control, you're a totalitarian. Period. That's the ice cream. What they're going to tell you, what the Democratic Party is going to tell you, is that Trump is the one violating the law. This is the 180-degree rule in operation. That's my saying, 180-degree rule. Psychologically, it's called projection. This is Alinsky. Accuse your opponent of doing what you're the one actually doing. What I'm going to tell you to do is, if you want to make heads or tails of what's going on in the world right now, do not listen to either side's words. Watch to see how they walk. How are they walking? Are they walking the walk? I don't care if you talk the talk. I don't care. Show me the walk. Okay? I'm going to show you something here. This, folks, is an admission of guilt from the Gateway Pundit, March 21st, 2025. Byline is Jim Hoft. Chuck Schumer says the quiet part out loud. We did put 235 progressive judges on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer admitted on PBS this week that Democrats intentionally stacked the courts with 235 progressive judges in order to stop President Donald Trump time after time after time since President Trump triumphantly returned to the White House on January 20th, 2025. His administration has faced an all-out legal assault, not from Congress or the will of the American people, but from a weaponized judicial branch hijacked by radical leftists. That is not opinion. That's actual objective truth, and I will endeavor to prove it to you before this show is over. It says in just 2 months, President Trump has been hit with 132 legal challenges with only 2 resolved, and all of those challenges were unlawful. Every one. I will show it to you before the show is over. And now Chuck Schumer has admitted it all on national television, appearing on PBS NewsHour. The far-left New York Democrat couldn't resist gloating over the left scheme. This is because evil boasts. I'm going to read the quote here. Geoff Bennett, he says, there are those who believe that we are, in real time, living through an assault on the constitutional order. Do you believe that we are in a constitutional crisis right now? Chuck Schumer, yes. Our democracy is at risk because Donald Trump shows that he wishes to violate the laws in many, many different ways. This is not true. I thought Trump would do that. He has not. I have been shocked. He has bent over backwards and tied himself in pretzel knots to appease these radical, lawless judges and their orders to the point that he has shocked me. I'm starting to believe for the first time that President Trump really is what he pretends to be or what he puts himself out. As a matter of fact, I've been shocked by how calm he's been lately. I'm wondering if for the very first time, America is seeing the true Donald Trump, because he has been very different every time I've seen him on a camera. Very different from anything I've ever seen of him in my lifetime. I'm surprised. Schumer continues. He says, the good news here is we did put 235 judges, progressive judges not under the control of Trump, last year on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time. They are supposed to be under control of the Constitution and the rule of law. Schumer just admitted to you that these are rogue judges that were put in there to push a political agenda. Any judge that looks to politics rather than the law is a subversive and should be taken off the bench. Schumer says, we hope that the appellate courts, when it gets up there in the Supreme Court, will uphold these rulings. They restored the money to NIH. They had no authority to do so. They required that 8,000 federal employees have to come back. They had no authority to do so. We're in over 100 lawsuits against them, and we are having a good deal of success. This is destroying the system of justice in this country. It's destroying the legitimacy of the courts. It's destroying the Constitution. He says it's only at the lower court level right now. And then it tells you to watch. Chuck Schumer admits the quiet part out loud, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Let's just get right into this. We'll come back to my blogging pages a little bit later. I want to go through some of this with you real quick. And then we'll come back to it. Like I said, it'll be disjuncted today. In order for my last post, I have to share this one with you folks because it's where we're going to go. Yes, that's actually a post. The feces is about to hit the auxiliary rotarator. At least I sure hope it does. I made that one up. This video right here. This is a post on the road to Concord. This video right here. Trump lawsuits simplified into basically three simple groups. Three types. Each is lawless. This is by a lawyer. And he calls his show The Law of Self-Defense. But he's a right-leaning lawyer, but he's a constitutionalist. And he explained this to his audience in very simple terms. And I strongly suggest that you go back after the show and watch it. It's only, I know it's a 2-hour broadcast, but the part you need to watch is only the first 10, 15 minutes. You might want to watch the rest of it. That's up to you. But here's the part. Here's what people aren't telling any of us. Here's what the media is not telling you, which proves to you that the media is another aspect, that's another head of this attack. And by media, I mean lamestream media. Even conservative media is dropping the ball here. In order for, let's say I'm one of these 5 accused terrorists or whatever, whatever group, the Venezuelan gang members. Okay. The ACLU is going to file a case, for a temporary restraining order to have them deported. You're supposed to go to the proper district court. These 5 people were held in Texas, but they went to the District of DC to file for their appeal. That's unlawful. When the Congress set these laws up, they set up the laws, and the Constitution says Congress gets to set up everything below the Supreme Court. So every federal court jurisdiction below the Supreme Court is in the authority of Congress per the United States Constitution. So Congress set up these jurisdictions, these little areas of the country. You're supposed to file in that area. If you do not, it's unlawful. It's called judge shopping. It's unlawful. If I am a DC judge bound by the Constitution and the rule of law, when the ACLU come to me and said, hey, we need to file for a temporary restraining order for these 5 people in Texas. Judge is supposed to say, I've got to recuse. No, you got to go back to Texas. Excuse me. And guess what? Boberg did just that. He did. He told them, I can't hear this case. Not if you frame it that way. In other words, he told them, find another way to file this. That should have made him recuse himself. He should have been forced to recuse himself right then and there. He quit being a judge and entered into the realm of politics. That was lawless. So right now, everybody who has filed outside of their proper jurisdiction, physical, the 5th district and this district and that district, those are unlawful filings. Second, you have to file within the proper jurisdiction of that district. So even if I had gone to DC, and even if Boberg said, okay, I'll hear this, then he has to have jurisdiction to hear the case. What they were filing under was deportation. That is not subject to the general jurisdiction of the appellate court that Boberg sits on. Congress set up a special adjudication process for that. It's not the kicking illegal aliens out of the country isn't even subject to judicial review. Congress set up a law that gives you due process, and they were supposed to file. These 5 thugs are supposed to file through that due process system. It is a judicial system, but what they're doing here is unlawful. Boberg should have never. He has no jurisdiction. Even within his district, he has no jurisdiction. This case, specifics of this case, do not belong in his courtroom, period. You got 2 unlawful acts by Boberg right now. Third, he has to have, there's also a jurisdiction for people who have been fired, and there's another jurisdiction. There are 3 different jurisdictions. None of them come under general review of these courts with these 130-something cases. All of these 130-something cases fail on these. They're either in the wrong jurisdiction or they're the wrong districts. Then you have to have the proper judge. So let's just assume that Boberg is the correct district and the correct jurisdiction. He's neither. Let's just assume that he did. Then you have to get the correct judge. He is not supposed to be. He was not the one that was coming up in order. And this has happened with several of them. They have had judges take these cases this one came up at 3:00 at night. He was not the next one in the rotation. They went specifically to him. They violated the standard practices and routines of that district court. This has happened in almost every one of these cases. They're judge shopping. They're looking for these progressive judges. Now, even if you meet all of that, you get the correct judge in the correct jurisdiction in the correct district. Now, the plaintiffs, the people asking for help, have to meet two standards. Well, there's actually four, but like the lawyer said in the video, there's only two that really matter here. One, you have to show that you are about to suffer irreparable harm. You're wanting an emergency restraining order. You have to show that without that restraining order, you're going to suffer irreparable harm. Now, the people who have been fired can't show that. In other words, if money can fix your problem, then you don't get a TRO, because all you got to do is go through the proper system. And eventually, if you win, you'll get your money. You'll be made whole. So the people who've been fired and the people who want their money paid out and all of this stuff, if it's just dealing with money or loss of job and everything, they can't prove that. They can't prove irreparable harm. The second thing they have to prove is that they are going to win more than likely, like 95% chance, 90, 95%, very, very likely that you will win in court eventually. Okay. The TRO is supposed to show you that, hey, look, I'm going to stop the process because if I let it go forward, you'll probably win, but it'll be too late because you'll have irreparable harm. Well, you have to show that there's irreparable harm. And if money can fix it, that's not irreparable. And you have to show that you're likely to win. Well, in the case of these 5 terrorists, these gang members, they can't prove that. They cannot show that. They will not win in a court of law. So they shouldn't have been given the hearing, should have not been, the TRO should not have been allowed. None, zero, not a single one of the 136 cases brought against President Trump and the Trump administration to date meets these standards. Not one. All of them are unlawful. Every one. So when Schumer says that he's trying to protect the law and the Constitution, Schumer is lying. Knowingly and willingly lying. That is an attack on the Constitution of the United States and a violation of his oath of office as a representative of the Constitution. He's actually technically a member of the court in a way. He's part of the legislature. He is charged with upholding our laws just like the executive and everything else. He is attacking the Constitution. That man is lying. This is not politics. Politics belongs in the legislature and the executive. The judiciary does not do politics. The minute it starts doing politics, it is no longer the judiciary. The minute a judge starts doing politics, they are no longer a judge. This is by definition. What have we all learned about definitions? If it is by definition and you want to argue with it, good luck. You're pushing that boulder uphill because you're now in the land of irrationality. That's just logic, folks. Now we come to something else. Even if the plaintiffs had met all of those standards, which nobody has, you have conflict of interest problems. So I went to the very left wing American Bar Association, and don't get me started on this because it is left wing. And I looked up this Rule 2.11, disqualification. A judge shall disqualify, shall, not may, shall. In logic and in legal language, that means will. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Do not pass go. You will disqualify yourself if any proceeding in which the judge impartiality might reasonably be questioned, including but not limited to the following circumstances. The judge has a personal bias or prejudice concerning a party or party's lawyer or personal knowledge of the facts there are disputed in the proceeding. Schumer just told you all 235 progressive judges are disqualified from hearing any case against Trump per rule number 1. They all have a personal bias. He told you that they were put in there to stop Trump. He said they put them there to stop Trump. That's a personal bias. Not a single Democratic judge should be hearing a case anymore in the federal appellate courts. None, according to the left-wing American Bar Association. That is not me distorting the ruling here or the reading or understanding. That this is Schumer telling you they did this. But the judges have told you this too. A lot of these judges have expressed their personal disapproval with Trump and the way he's acting and what he's doing. The minute a judge expresses personal disapproval of a political nature, like when Judge Roberts said, "I don't like what you're doing," they disqualified themselves. They're now political. They're no longer qualified to hear a case. They've shown a personal bias. Point number 2, the judge knows that the judge's spouse or domestic partner or person within the third degree of relationship to either of them, or the spouse or domestic partner of such a person is a party to the proceeding, or an officer, director, general partner, management member, or trustee of a party acting as a lawyer in the proceeding, or see a person who has more than a minimus interest that could be substantially affected by the proceeding or likely to be a material witness in the proceeding. Some of these judges should have been disqualified for these purposes. Point number 3, the judge knows that he or she individually or as a fiduciary or the judge's spouse, domestic partner, parent, or child, or any other member of the judge's family residing in the judge's household has an economic interest in the subject matter, in controversy, or in party to the proceeding. Oh, we have got to stop right there, boys and girls. Guess what? That Judge Merchant, or whatever the heck his name, her name, or whatever, the one who oversaw Trump's supposed conviction, should have never got the case. And by the way, FBI Director Kash Patel is looking into this. That judge had to recuse themselves because their daughter was making $15 million off of the information being leaked out of that court. So the judge is sitting on a case where the daughter is, even if they didn't, the daughter is subject to making money off that case. Point number 3, immediate disqualification. Boberg, the one who is telling the Trump administration, do all these things or else there's going to be consequences. Well, guess what? His sister, and I think sister-in-law, with 2 members of his immediate family, are making money off of telling illegal aliens how to avoid being deported. That's a clear conflict of interest under Article number 3. Point being here, folks, that none, zero, zip, nada, not a one of the judges that we know of in these cases that are before the appellate courts that are being used to shut down the Trump administration's agenda, not a one of those judges should be on the bench, let alone hearing any of these cases. They don't meet the qualifications according to their own bar association. So nobody has the proper jurisdiction or district filing. They don't have the qualifications, the wrong judges. None of this is lawful. And you got the Democrats out there saying Trump is the one that's breaking the law. This is ticking me off to judges have no authority over political matters per the United States Constitution. They only have the authority over points of law, matters of the law itself. You say, well, Joe, that's what they're doing. Trump broke the law. No, he hasn't. And even if he had, they're not going through the proper jurisdictions and the proper procedures to argue that point. Do you know why? Because every one of these cases knows that if they went through the proper proceedings, they'd be thrown out of court. They'd never get anywhere. They'd never go anywhere. Now, there's one other thing that none of these cases has done. It's a matter of U.S. law. And I don't know if you remember, I brought it up on the show. I put it in my blog posting. I think it was last week. It could have been the week before. President Trump signed an executive order, directing Attorney General Bondi to make sure that this point of the law is enforced in all of these cases against him. The point of the law is, if you're going to bring a case against Trump administration and you're going to file against this person, that person, this, whatever, you have to deposit money in an escrow account sufficient to make the party that you're attacking, you're filing a case against, whole should you lose your case. So how much money do you think, let's say these 5 gang members, they want to file against Trump. And let's say they lose. but it's going to take 3 years to fight this in courts. Well, the party that's going to be aggrieved here is the American people, because all that money had to be spent fighting that court case. Well, how much do you think that's going to take? Let's just say $1 million per person. I know that's probably on the low side. So $5 million. Each of these gang members is supposed to deposit $5 million in an escrow account with the courts before they can file their hearing. That's a matter of law. I've looked it up. It's in the law. None of these people, in all 136 cases, they're supposed to be depositing money. The judges know this. If the judge hears the case without the escrow deposit, it is an unlawful hearing. This isn't a you can, this is a you shall. It's in the law. It says shall deposit. Well, Joe, they've never done this in the past. Bing, 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 bing. Exactly. Well, that means they don't have to do it. Wrong. Thanks for playing. Try again next time. What we're seeing is the court system being held, its feet held to the fire. In this case, the fire is the letter of the law. Shock of shocks for me. If you know me, you've been with me any length of time, you know I am not MAGA. You know I have great concerns about President Trump. But President Trump, and more specifically his legal beagles, are adhering to the law more than any president in your lifetime. And that includes Ronald Reagan. You heard me right. They are adhering to the law the way it is meant to operate better than anybody in our lifetimes. And, well, I don't care if you go all the way back to FDR and you're old enough to remember him. I'm telling you that we have not had a president that has adhered to the law this well since the founding fathers were still breathing. I am shocked by what I'm seeing. I never in my life expected I'd see this, especially from the likes of Donald Trump. But that's what's going on, is the courts are finally being told, you've been doing it wrong the whole time. Just like plea bargaining. They've made that legal. The Constitution doesn't allow you to plea bargain, not in a federal case. You might be able to do that in a state cases, but not in a federal case. That's not allowed. That's been created by decree. And all of these judges are ruling, well, the federal statute or the federal law or whatever the heck it is, it says, well, it established this and it says blah, 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 blah. So you can't go against the federal law. So I'm gonna tell you, the federal law says you can't fire these people there, President Trump. Okay. Is the jurisdiction under the executive? Well, yeah, but the law said. I don't give a rat's rip what the law says. It's unconstitutional. Well, we've always done, I don't care what you've done your whole life. It's an unconstitutional law. And that's part of what the beauty of all this is that Trump is bringing all of these laws that are unconstitutional. The bureaucracy is under attack, folks. No feces, Batman. Trump is saying these laws are unconstitutional. So part of what we're seeing, there's another case. What just happened? Okay, I must be really well. Okay, I'm sorry.
I think you're okay. You did have a little freeze just a few minutes ago, but
well, my monitor that shows the live feed is doing really weird things. I'm hoping that's not happening to everybody else out there. I just refreshed
so far,
it.
We're looking okay here on my end, at least.
So what we got going on right now is just Trump is taking these laws that set up the bureaucracies and where they're trying to say, okay, well, you got an independent organization. Yeah, we're over the target. You got that right, Natasha. Because one of the lawyers I watch is Robert Guevara, something or other, Esquire. And man, he reads through the hearings. I mean, it's a little dry. It's kind of boring, but he's reading through all these court filings and he's explaining them to you. He's giving you a law lesson and they're great. It's wonderful because one of them, you see, this group is wanting its money back. The American Peace or something or other, U.S. Peace, whatever. This group is saying I think they say it like 12 dozen times. We're an independent organization, independent organization. No, you're not. No, you're not. There is no such thing as an independent organization in the United States government. You are either under the legislature, under the executive, or under the judiciary. You cannot be all three. The minute that you are legislature, executive, and judicial parts all together, you're no longer constitutional. Now, why is that important? Okay, this is all convoluted, folks. I haven't got all of this in everything I'm telling you. I have checked. So if you trust me, cool. If not, email me. I'll show you where to go get it. I did not make a slideshow to bring all the receipts to you today. If that's a problem for you, feel free to leave. I get it. I understand. I won't blame you. But I can bring the receipts to anything I'm telling you today. I've looked into this. I've been following behind these lawyers I've been listening to. What we have is this group saying, we're an independent agency set up by Congress. Well, yeah, but you're also funded by Congress and you're under the executive. So you're not independent. You're not. I don't care if you tell me you're independent. And they're saying, look, the ordinance that the Congress wrote to set us up says we're independent. The ordinance is unconstitutional. The ordinance puts this U.S. peace initiative, whatever, under the executive. It was signed by Ronald Reagan. I still have to look into this. I don't know, but I suspect strongly that this was one of these things they stick in these omnibus bills where you have to sign them or the whole world shuts down, and that's how this happens. Because I don't see Reagan setting this up, because this U.S. peace initiative, whatever group, they're conducting State Department business outside of the State Department. They're doing international affairs relations work outside of the State Department. So they go to the judge and they say, we want our money back. President Trump unlawfully took our money. Well, that's not a irreparable damage. So you shouldn't be getting a TRO. You should be going to the jurisdiction that handles contractual conflicts. That Congress set that up. It's totally separate. But here's the point. They're under the executive. The Constitution gives all executive power to the president. As long as it deals with the operation of the executive department, it is not subject to judicial review. Period. So when the judge says, well, you can't fire these people, you violated blah, blah law, they're pointing to these U.S. ordinances and these U.S. statutes. Say, see? And Schumer said, see, you broke the law. No, you cannot break an unconstitutional law, because if it's unconstitutional, it's not a law. Period. Full stop. Do not pass go. The Constitution, we've read that on this show before. Article 2, Section 1, all executive power granted in a single president. All. Now, the case that these judges are resting on to say that I can tell the president what to do in this limited ability goes back to something under Truman or FDR or whatever. Goes back early 20th century. And it says, well, except in the case, that's true, it's true, we can't do it, except in the case of the federal judiciary, the Federal Trade Administration or whatever. Because they have partially legislative, partially executive, partially judicial powers. Grab that Chief Justice and smack him on the head until he starts thinking straight. He just said that Federal Trade Administration is unconstitutional because it has legislative, executive, and judicial powers all within itself. That's not allowed under the Constitution. Here's part of what's happened to America. We have been conditioned, MK Ultra and Mockingbird have worked together to teach us that if the law says we can do it without having to amend the Constitution. Wrong. Thanks for playing. Try again later when you get a brain. And yes, I'm being that ugly to you if you believe that, because you failed civics. You've never read the Constitution, which goes to most you lawyers out there. There's a separation of powers for a reason. These laws that set up these bureaucracies and then think that the bureaucracies are independent of the executive that they're put under are wrong. The president can hire and fire anybody he wants to in the executive division. It doesn't matter. You've been appointed for a 5-year period. Doesn't matter. If you're under the executive, you serve at the pleasure of the elected president. Period. End of story. So now we're going to come to Elon Musk. They're saying, well, Doge is illegal because Musk was not confirmed by the Senate. Doesn't have to be. He's not a cabinet member. He is not serving in a function that needs to be confirmed by the Senate. He has no power to hire and fire. The lawyer who reads these hearings, I was shocked. I guarantee you haven't heard this in the media. One of these cases, one of these judges said, Elon has to show me everybody he hired and fired, and he's got to hire them all back, USAID or whatever. 2 problems with this. The first one right off the bat. If the judge says Elon doesn't have the authority to fire them, how the heck can Elon hire them back? Get that judge off the bench. He doesn't know his head from the hole in the ground. But here's the point. In that hearing, before that judge, the Trump administration lawyers came and said, okay, you're asking for information you have no authority to ask for. You have no jurisdiction. We'll give it to you anyway. Here are the names of all the appointed members of the executive who actually fired those people. Elon didn't fire a single person. He gave his recommendations to President Trump's people, the properly appointed and confirmed people who actually signed the firing notices. That should have ended that case right there. Case over. This is lawlessness in the courtroom. This is a constitutional crisis. This is an attack. You now have 3 heads of Hydra. You have the Democratic representatives, you have the Democratic controlled, or you have the deep state politicians, because some of them are Republicans. Let me change. Deep state politicians, deep state, quote unquote, media, propaganda arm, deep state judges. This is all unlawful. All of it. And it's been driving me up a wall because nobody seems to understand this until yesterday. Pam Bondi told Boberg to pound sand. In legal language, she basically said, Sorry, that's as close as I get to Dan Bongino. So none of our bureaucracies are outside the authority of the executive. They've all been put under the executive. Trump could come in today and wipe them out. Proof. Do you know how the judges are telling Trump you cannot fire anybody at USAID? Not even by executive order. Do you know how USAID was established? By executive order. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, JFK. That's how it came into being. If you brought it into existence, let me quote him back when he was cool before he became a criminal, a pervert, you'll understand. I brought you into this world. I can take you out. Bill Cosby. The president brought you into this world. The president can take you out. USAID can be taken out with an executive order. So how is it that he can't fire them? Now, they're going to tell him yesterday he's starting to abolish the education department. They're going to say, you can't do that. Jimmy Carter brought it into this world with an executive order. President Trump can take it out with an executive order. Not subject to judicial review. Period. End of story. Full stop. Don't pass go. If you hear this case, you're no longer acting as a judge. You are acting as a lawless individual who is attacking our constitutional system of government, and that is the very definition of sedition, subversion, and sedition. I looked them up in the U.S. Code. You'll see them next hour. So all of this, the lawlessness is coming from the deep state. If you pass a law that allows you to do something that the Constitution prohibits, whether the courts ever hear it or not is irrelevant. The law is unconstitutional. If the time comes when the law is finally struck down, you may not be able to repair everything that's happened in the past, but you need to repair as much of it as possible. So that's going to go to where President Trump has said that these pardons are null and void. Now they're going to say, well, he's going to lose in court. He shouldn't. If he goes to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court says, no, the pardons stand. The court needs to be removed immediately. The charge is treason against the Constitution of the United States of America. It is a constitutional stipulation that only the president can pardon. The machine is not the president. AutoPen is for daily things like, well, the president has to sign this requisition to buy Band-Aids for the first aid department of the White House, or the president needs to sign all these pictures, or the president needs to sign all these thank you letters, or the president needs to sign this order so that so-and-so can connect the electricity. They are not for the signing of bills, laws, pardons, treaties. Any official act of the president must be signed by his hand in a pen. These pardons had to be signed that way. The president also has to have the mens rea to sign them, the mental capacity to do so. He does not. Biden did not have the mental capacity to do anything he did as president. I said that back when he was elected. Before he was elected, I've said it the whole time. Now even the left is admitting that he's not had the mens rea to do this. It's amazing how the left is telling President Trump what he can and cannot do, and they never once asked who in the bloody blazes was running the country under Biden. I don't want to hear anybody on the political left asking any questions about Donald Trump if they were not screaming, hopping up and down, yelling who is running the country. If they cannot show me that in a video that I know is predated before this last election, I don't want to hear you running your mouth, because you are part of the active civil war. You are a subversive. You are a true seditionist. You are a traitor and in committing treason to this nation and its Constitution. And I mean that in the constitutional sense. You are siding willingly, knowingly, intentionally siding with a group of people who have coordinated across multiple branches of our government and our society to bring down the duly elected president and the rightful constitutional form of government under which we are supposed to exist. That is the United States Legal Code's definition of sedition and subversion. And in this case, since you're tying in people who were sent here by an enemy of this country to subvert and disrupt this country through terrorist acts, now you're walking on the edge of treason. And nobody wants to explain it that way, except General Flynn. Yesterday, General Flynn put out a post on X, a tweet. He sees it this way. We'll show it to you next hour. Now we've got this Alien and Enemies Act. I got to get to this before we go. This judge is saying that President Trump can't use that. Really? Okay. Let's have a look at this. Alien Enemies Act, the one Alien Sedition Act still on the books. Well, all of those acts were went away with. And scroll down here. The act is still in effect. It says, in addition to its grant of powers under the Necessary and Proper Clause, Congress has the exclusive ability to declare a state of war under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. The Alien Enemies Act goes into effect, quote, whenever there shall be a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government. See, Joe, Trump can't do that. Keep reading. Just like in your scriptures, keep reading. Or, in logic, that means if I meet the prior or the following conditions. So it'll go into effect, or any invasion or predatory incursion shall be perpetrated, attempted, or even threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government. Venezuela emptied its prisons, dumped them into the United States. That is exactly the qualifications for what President Trump has declared. Now, that means that these gang members, these Venezuelan gang members, are an enemy to the United States. And the judge is telling President Trump that he can't deport enemies of the United States under the act that gives President Trump sole authority. It is not subject to judicial review. So the judge is trying to insert his will over the will of the American people through their duly appointed elected representative, the President of the United States. He's trying to subvert the will of the American people to give aid and comfort to known enemies of the United States. The Constitution calls that treason. It is a good thing that I am not Kash Patel, because when the court opened today, my FBI agents would walk into the court, to Boberg's office, into his court, after he had seated himself, tell him to stand his scrawny butt up and put his hands behind his back, and the charges are treason against the United States and the United States Constitution. It meets the constitutional definition. It does. It should be treated as such. We're not doing that. Why? Even President Trump isn't doing it yet. Why? That's a good question. I want that question answered. Why? This is treason. This is treason. Why? Why are we so scared to declare treason against people? Why won't we do it? There's a reason President Trump put the death penalty back into play for things like this. I hope it's coming. If you're going to be a traitor to this country, yeah. Guess what? When President Trump berated Boberg and Chief Justice Roberts spoke up in his defense, he knowingly and willingly aligned himself with a traitor in defense of those enemies of the United States. If I were a lawyer, I would love the opportunity to try to make my case against Chief Justice Roberts that he has committed treason. Unfortunately, I have to impeach him first. Oh, wait a minute. No, I don't. The Constitution doesn't say I have to impeach anybody before I can try them, except the president. I don't have to impeach a congressman. I don't have to impeach a senator. I don't have to impeach a judge before I can charge them with crimes and prosecute. Which means, if I were Kash Patel, Judge Roberts would be frog marched on public TV, and he'd have to defend himself against a charge of treason. This must stop. We're in a civil war. I understand the ramifications of what I'm saying. I am not calling for violence. I'm not calling for executions. That's the left doing that. We'll talk about that next hour. I am talking about upholding the constitutional rule of law as our founding fathers explained it, espoused it, and ratified it. Original intent is the only way that a contract is binding. This living document thing, that's a progressive idea, so that progressive judges can claim to do whatever they want, because is means something different today than it did when the founding fathers wrote it, which is why President Clinton wanted to know what the definition of is. Everybody thought he was being cute and funny and silly. No, he wasn't. He was being a very good progressive. Now, we're going to go to a 5-minute break today instead of 6. I got a little something to play for you that we haven't played in a while. Kind of reflects my mood. Make sure you're back in your seat. When this is over, we get back to this, I'm going to start showing you what's really been hacking me off. Because up until right now, this is the cheap seats stuff. It gets worse. See you in a few.
Gentlemen, there is no longer any ground for hope. If we wish to be free, if we wish to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges which belong to us as free men, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, in which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our struggle be obtained, then we must fight. I repeat it, sir. We must fight! And a pure arms and to the God of hosts is all we have left us.
Arms, Mr. Henry! What arms? We
tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so powerful an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week? Or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and a British guard shall be stationed in every house? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs, hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemy hath bound us hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means the God of nature hath placed in our power. 3 millions of people, armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country that which we possess, are invincible by any force our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations, who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, sirs, we have no election. Should we be base enough to desire it, it is now already too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat, but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged, their clanking may be heard upon the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come!
Mr. We speak for peace, sir!
It is in vain to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that blows from the north shall bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that they wish? What would they have? Is life so dear? Or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take. But as for me, give me liberty or give me death!
Looks like it hung up on me there for a second. All right. Hopefully everybody's getting themselves back here. I need to talk to you about something else before we get going. Do you know the history of the CIA? It started out as the OSS. I think it was Office of Special Services or Operational Special Services or whatever. It's under, if I remember right, Major Donovan. And the point here is it was a pseudo or paramilitary organization when it started out, World War II. The CIA has remained that way for a long time. And I see that one of your classmates is here today. He's gonna glean more from what I'm about to tell you than most people will, for his own reasons. In the spook world, intelligence operatives, they will often send people into an area. Office of Strategic Services. Thank you, Mr. Keeley. They'll often send people into an area to do things. It's called wet work. They get their hands dirty. They do the hands-on stuff. But they're done in a way that they have no affiliation to any nation. So if they get caught, the federal government, the United States government can say, wasn't with me, even though he was. He's getting his orders, he or she getting the orders from the United States and getting paid by the United States, funded, supported, everything. But they do it in a way where you can say, Now, do you remember the public-private partnerships that the media was talking about all over the place not too long ago? We're going to have public-private partnership. And I try to explain to you that that's fascism. Well, one of the things that Doge and Elon Musk's team has exposed is how these NGOs work, these non-government organizations, and BlackRock, or whatever the heck it is, Blackwater, BlackRock, it's about to come into play here, because BlackRock was one of these NGOs that worked for the State Department. What USAID and there are other means, I don't know if you've seen this, but Elon just came out and told Senator Cruz that they've discovered at least 14 magic money computers that just print money out of nothing with no congressional authority whatsoever. They just print it, give people money. So what we've been doing, exactly, no plausible deniability. Nobody knows they exist. Exactly. Well, in this case, the NGOs, they're working in partnership with the government, and everybody knows it. They take their orders from the government because they're funded by the government through USAID and other things. And then they'll say, just like these government agencies that claim to be independent operation, government, we're not even affiliated with the government. You were set up by an act of Congress, you're funded by Congress, and you're set up under the executive. That you don't claim to be independent. U.S. Peace Initiative Group, whatever. You're not independent. These NGOs aren't either. This is a farce. We've got another head of Hydra. Remember, head number one, the visible politicians. Head number two, the propaganda arm called media. Head number three, the judiciary. Head number four, NGOs. They're funded by the government. They do the government's wet work. So let me explain how this works. Doge is giving me a hard time. They found how I'm funding my, and some of this money, it goes to these NGOs. These NGOs turn around and give some of it back to the congressmen and senators and judges, because like Boberg, I've seen a report that seems to be valid that he lives in a $2.7 million mansion, but he only makes a couple $100,000 a year. There's no way that a judge should be living that way. And yet he does. He doesn't make enough money to support that. And he's in a very exclusive, wonky part of DC. These people are all corrupt. Doge ought to go do audits on every member of the federal government. And that's how they're getting, this is one of the ways they make their money, foreign aid money. We know that a lot of the money that was going to the Ukraine turns around and comes right back to the various arms of the deep state in the United States. We have the paper trail. We know how it's happening. So we give this money to to an NGO. And the NGO funds it, funds the operations, the wet works for the government, so that the government can say, hey, it wasn't us. So we have a problem with Elon Musk. So we got to do something. Got to do something about Elon. We got a problem with some of these Republicans that are actually starting to, talking heads in the media, influential people in the government, reporters, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to organize the swatting of these people that are supporting Doge and President Trump. We've got to SWAT MAGA, and we have to do something. We're going to attack Tesla because we want to hurt Elon and try to put pressure on him to quit doing what he's doing. This is called terrorism. Swatting is an attempt of murder. So what I do is I give some of my money, your taxpayer dollars. The deep state gives it to, Act Blue, who then gives it to one of George Soros's groups, who then gives it to the people who are organizing the swatting attacks on Tesla. The vandalism attacks, the terrorist attacks. And if somebody says, hey, the deep state's funding the attacks on Elon Musk, they'll say, oh, no, that's Act Blue and, Media Matters or whatever. That's those people. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. And this is the problem. This is one of the problems we're having. And this is what's happening. They're giving the NGO money and then telling the NGO, if you want to keep getting your money, go do our wet work so that we can maintain plausible deniability. Now, these swatting attacks are starting to be treated as exactly what they are, an attempted murder. And these attacks on Tesla owners and Tesla dealerships are being treated as exactly what they are. They are terrorism. They should be prosecuted as such. But they're being organized. One of the things that I don't know if you've seen or not, let me put this up. Here we go. This is one of the posts. I have been posting about this stuff on my blog page. Independent journalist uncovers a critical clue in the swatting epidemic targeting influential conservative figures as 2 more victims, including Cat Turd, are revealed. Now, he's a X personality, Twitter personality. DOJ need to act now. Just in, FBI Director Kash Patel issues a statement regarding radical leftists trying to kill conservative figures by having their homes swatted. He's going to treat it as attempted murder. They're going to investigate it this way. But this independent journalist has uncovered, and this is from March 14th. There's been more come out since then. We know that this money is coming through Soros, and it's coming through U.S. funding of this stuff. And it's being organized and orchestrated. That website that went up showing you everybody that had bought a Tesla and using a flamethrower or a Molotov cocktail as a cursor on that site. That's inflammatory. That's a call to action. That's an attempt to get people to do violence on your behalf for a political agenda. We'll see what that means in just a minute. But this is Maxine Waters. A quote, she says, Trump's presidency is pushing the country towards civil war, according to Representative Maxine Waters. And Waters insists that Democrats would resist by remaining nonviolent, invoking Martin Luther King's teachings. Only she and other Democratic representatives have been saying, we're going to get in the streets. You people got to get in the streets. You got to oppose Trump and Elon at every turn. They'll claim they're peaceful while inciting violence and calling for him to be brought down and taken down, Musk or Trump to be killed. This is happening everywhere in our country. I can't keep up with the stories. How about this? Kill that vice. Kill that vice. Leftists call for Vice President J.D. Vance to be killed as he enters Kennedy Center with wife Usha. Did you see the thing where, was it Kimmel? Talking about, hey, how you like this terrorism against Tesla? And everybody cheered. Folks, that is an organized effort against the duly elected and rightful authority of the United States of America. Elon Musk works at the pleasure of the president, does a job for the president. He's rightful and lawful in what he's doing. He's doing this country a great service. This is an attack on them. It's a deliberate U.S. taxpayer funded, at least in part, attempt to kill people, to do physical damage, use terror, threats of violence, and actual violence to achieve a political agenda. Terrorism, the use of violence or the threat of violence, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political goals. Boom! Meets the definition. Definition 3. The practice of coercing government to accede to political demands by committing violence on civilian targets. Any similar use of violence to achieve goals. This is terrorism. The definition of sedition. Conduct or language inciting rebellion against the authority of a state. That is exactly what the left is doing. Also, the raising of commotion in a state, not amounting to insurrection. Conduct tending toward treason, but without an overt act. Excitement of discontent against the government or of resistance to unlawful authority. The Democratic Party is guilty of this. The mainstream media is guilty of this. Subversion, to overthrow or ruin, or to subvert. That's what the judges are doing. They're subversives. These Democrats and then politicians and the talking heads in the mainstream media, they're seditionists. And you can go right here if you wanted to. And you read all that folks, look. Chapter 115, treason, sedition, and subversion activities. This is a U.S. government. This is uscode.house.gov. That's the United States Code. And they can be charged under these. This is illegal. This is all illegal. This is true sedition. This is true subversion. This is true sedition. January 6th. Have you followed that? Have you been keeping up with that? I have. That's a false flag attack. It was a false flag. Yes, there was some violence there. They incited it on purpose. I have seen the videos of the Capitol Police throwing tear gas and firing rubber bullets into the crowd, unprovoked. They shot one guy who was just talking to somebody. They shot him in the back of the head. He had his back to the cops. It was a group of people right the police were up on an elevated part of the Capitol and people were down. There was no rioting going on. There was soon after that. They incited that. They did that on purpose. And we now know that one of the people that's in Pelosi's office now, there's an investigative journalist out. He calls this guy Pelosi's Precious. He can be traced all the way back to Occupy Wall Street. He organizes this stuff. We still don't know who the heck Ray Epps is or what he was doing there. We still don't know the identity of the pipe bomber, but I guarantee you they know who that pipe bomber was. They know. They know. Bongino pretty much told us that before he went to work for the FBI. This was an orchestrated false flag attack so that they could set President Trump up and accuse him of leading an insurrection, which then they could use the 14th Amendment to say, well, you can't run for president. This was an attempt to take out President Trump. They framed him, tried to. We now know that he was innocent. He was telling people to go home. We know the case in New York against him. That case is a kangaroo court. He is guilty of nothing. It surprises the hell out of me. I'm serious. I thought for sure, but I'm shocked. But that was kangaroo court. And by the way, he's not technically a convicted felon. They like to use that language, but the judge interrupted the case. They never sentenced him, which is why President Trump has never appealed the conviction. He can't. He can't appeal until he's sentenced. They did not sentence him because they know the minute he's sentenced, he will appeal and the whole case will be thrown out immediately because the judge was biased. Should have never had the case to begin with. It'll be over. We're under attack and our own system's being used against us, and people do not understand. You cannot fight. You can't fight what we're up against through the court system. It won't work. This is an asymmetrical war. Now, if you're going to try to use the courts, the only way this works is you have to declare the deep state a criminal organization. And this is why they won't do it. If I treat it as a civil war, people are going to freak. If I treat it as a RICO case, which is something else I've said we need to do, people will freak. Why? In order to do this correctly, RICO, I have to declare the entire Democratic Party and all elected representatives part of the RICO case. I have to declare the mainstream media as part of the RICO case. I have to declare all these government-connected NGOs as part of the RICO case. Hollywood is part of the RICO case. Our entire intelligence community is part of the RICO case. Everybody will be part. They've got to go. And what would happen? Even people who are sympathetic to MAGA or hard-wing MAGA would say, whoa, wait a minute. You can't just eliminate a political party. We've done that before in this country, and we've tried to do it before. That's part of why Adams and Jefferson, formerly good friends, that's why they didn't talk for decades until right before their deaths, because they went after each other. Adams had the original Aliens and Enemies, the anti-sedition law passed so that it was illegal to criticize President Adams, but it was legal to criticize Vice President Jefferson. They tried to cancel and nullify each other. This was all over party politics, which is exactly why President Washington told us, don't ever allow party politics to start. Don't do parties in this country. Don't allow them. We didn't listen. So if I treat this as a terrorism RICO case. That's the only way the law is going to work, because the laws are different under terrorism and RICO. RICO was designed specifically to go after interstate organized crime, because state by state, the laws will not allow you to attack. That's why Al Pacino had to be gotten on a federal charge of mail fraud or something, and tax evasion, things like that. You're not going to stop this unless you get serious with it. And the American people won't let you. They won't. They don't have the stomach for what we have to do. And by the way, this is going to wrap up a lot of Republicans if you do this. You're going to get a lot of Republicans caught in this net because they're guilty. The reporter with January 6th, he was talking to, where did I see him? I know he's been on with Beck, but I saw him, might have been Joe Rogan or somewhere else. The reason you don't know the truth about January 6th yet, yeah, it was Beck, is he said that there are some high-level Republicans getting in the way and obstructing it. They're protecting the people who organized the false flag attack, the Republicans. And the reporter doesn't want to give their names. He knows their names. Beck said, give them to me. I'll publish them. Well, I'd like to know their names. I really would. But this is very, very serious. And nobody is paying any attention. You know, they framed Nixon. And I'm pretty sure they tried to frame Reagan with the Iran-Contra scandal. This is the MO. This is how our intelligence community works. And we can now see the patterns. Here's another one I want to show you. I just want to go through some of these things that I've been putting up on my blog page. This one is from Judicial Tyranny. And we, like right here, Kash Patel confirms Judge Juan Merchan should have never been assigned to the Donald Trump's case. And he says, I'm calling for subpoenas. I'm looking into this. And this is on Twitter or X or whatever. So I took the text down here. It says, Kash Patel confirms that Judge Juan Merchan should have never been assigned to Donald Trump's case. Kash Patel says, quote, I'm calling for subpoenas to be issued to Judge Merchan's daughter company who made $15+ million from the illicit information pouring out of her father's courtroom. I want to know the bank records because money doesn't lie. I want to know how deep it is and how much of it went to the family and how much of it is going to the family after this false conviction. Then we need to investigate the FEC's actual violations that the judge and his family conducted. Judge Juan Merchan should never have been overseeing this trial to begin with because of the illicit campaign money that was flowing through there, and the unconstitutional due process violations are only the beginning. That's not all. Here's more reasons why he should have never been assigned to Donald Trump's case from the older millennial. He says, for these types of cases, the way it's supposed to work, it's that there's a panel of 24 judges, and they are all put in a rotation and randomly assigned to these types of cases. Judge Merchan is not on that panel. That's because he's not a judge. He's an acting judge. The only way he could have caught this case was to be specifically assigned to it. There was no chance of him being randomly selected. The wild thing is that according to the left and the Department of Justice, Judge Merchan was not only randomly selected to be the judge in the trial, but he was also randomly selected to be the judge in the Trump Organization case, and he was randomly selected to be the judge in the Steve Bannon case. So Judge Merchan, a judge that is not in the pool of 24 judges that is supposed to catch these cases, a judge that is not an actual judge, but an acting judge, caught all three Trump-related cases randomly. This is a judge who gives heavily to an organization very plainly named Stop Trump, and a judge whose daughter makes tens of millions of dollars every year promoting Democrats' insane corruption. Remember what I was telling you earlier in the show? Trump's conviction is illegitimate. It's false. Now, I knew that because I was following all of this. I was keeping up with this case. Oh, yeah, that's right. Al Capone, not Pacino. Well, whatever. They're all the same. You folks, if you've been with me any length of time, you know I'm bad with names. But you remember the person that I could never remember his name, and I still can't remember his name. His number is 7. Charlie, do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Did we not?
Yes. Aaron, what's his name?
I cannot remember the guy's name, but what's his number? His number is 7.
Number 7. Yep. And
I
I
can
can't think
remember
of his
numbers.
name right now either, but maybe Aaron does. That's funny.
But his number is 7. So y'all have to forgive me. My brain doesn't work that way. Okay.
Ray
Wanna share?
Comfort.
Ray Comfort. There we go. But his number is 7. Give me a number, I'll remember it. All right. Here's this one. We've all seen this quote before. Marcus Tullius Cicero. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gates freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in every hall of government itself. The deep state is the enemy within the gates. And I've wrote about this. And President Trump issues an absolutely explosive reply to the radical judge who ordered him to turn around the planes deporting the illegal aliens. And there's Trump's comment. The Chief Justice Roberts defended the rogue judiciary and slams Trump, calling for impeachment. Roberts said, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for this purpose, Roberts said in a rare statement. And apparently, Chief Justice Roberts doesn't know the law. Here's Newt Gingrich. Those upset by the emerging dictatorship of district court justices behaving as though they were president should read the Judiciary Act of 1802. Jefferson and his party completely revised the court system and abolished a series of Federalist judges they deemed illegitimate, a warning to the current out-of-control judiciary. I looked that up. Yes, Jefferson did do that. Gingrich is correct. Roberts is wrong. Roberts either lied, or Roberts has a mental inability to do his job, or Roberts was aligning himself with his buddy, Boberg. Hold on. We'll get to that. There's your Judiciary Act of 1802. But wait, it gets worse. Apparently, Chief Justice Roberts doesn't know, or more likely doesn't care, about the serious conflict of interest that should have, under a fair court of law, prevented him from ever taking any case against President Trump. Boom! Laura Loomer uncovers an enormous taxpayer-funded conflict of interest involving Obama judge who ordered Trump admin to stop deporting criminal aliens mid-flight and his own daughter. Apparently, his daughter gets paid by the federal government to protect illegal aliens. He should have never taken the case, just like I told you. And down here, these are the rules that disqualify the judge. Then I have an addendum down here. A couple of other things you can look into if you'd like. Another story. It's a real left-wing insurrection. And I posted, this has reached the point of organized terrorism. It must stop. These are the attacks for swatting conservatives and for going after Tesla. Trump haters launched Dogequest site targeting Tesla owners and fear campaign. This is all, there's the definitions I've already given you. Musk fears for his life. I would too if I was him. Soros-linked network behind lawsuit attempts to stop Trump from deporting illegal alien gang members. A legal firm with deep ties to George and Alexander Soros network of the left-wing nonprofits and non-governmental organizations, NGOs, meaning it's funded by the United States government, deep state, is partially behind a lawsuit attempting to block President Donald Trump from deporting illegal alien gang members from the United States under the Alien Enemies Act, Breitbart News has learned. Now, what did I tell you? That we have an independent investigative journalist has already linked Soros and his NGOs to the Tesla attacks and the swatting attacks. Now it's linked to the attempt to stop the deportation of these criminal aliens, these illegal aliens and these gang members and domestic terrorists, illegal alien terrorists. This is all linked. Soros is the front man. There's somebody above, or plenty of people above Soros. He's the one they let you see. Okay, Soros isn't doing this anymore, folks. Soros is too old to have this type of. This is all just smoke and mirrors. Go after the NGOs. But this is evidence that, RICO won't do this, Mr. Keeley, and you know it. This is an asymmetrical, coordinated attack on the country from an enemy within our own government. This is our government being used to attack our own government. This is an insurrection. This is a rebellion. The United States legal code calls this a rebellion. President Trump could, folks, I'm being serious as I know how to be. As serious as the day I led my troops into combat in Desert Storm. That's all I know how to tell you. That's how serious I am. President Trump can do something right now that Lincoln did. Lincoln did it illegally. The South was not in an insurrection. They were not rebelling against the country. They were just seceding. This is a rebellion. Trump could declare this an open rebellion from within the government, and he could suspend the Constitution. He has the authority to do this. He doesn't need Congress to help him do this. As a matter of fact, he has a duty to do this, if truth be told. If he does not succeed in killing this Hydra, you remember the old maxim, if you're going to shoot and try to kill the king, you better succeed. If he doesn't kill this Hydra, we're all done. They'll purge us. Remember, the Weather Underground, Barack Obama's people, and Obama's at the heart of this. Obama's behind a lot of this. He was the one running the government. Him and his cronies were running the government behind Biden. He even said so. Remember, before the election, I could run a third presidency from the basement. Who do you think was doing it? It was all Obama's people in Biden's administration. So, Joe, you can't prove any of this. No, I can't prove this in a court of law. Not from where I'm at, not without discovery, not without an investigative team. But I'm not trying to prove this through a court of law. If I were sitting in a military intelligence room right now, and I brought this to my superiors, I guarantee you they'd act on it. If it was a war, they'd act on it. I've got more than enough to get people to act on this. We've gone to war over less than what we have right now. This is real hardcore, actionable intelligence right here in the open for us if we would just accept it for what it is. We're too afraid to look the monster in the eye. So you go back here. Natalie Winters brings receipts. Soros-funded group and the group Indivisible is paying far-left activists to protest Tesla dealerships. Soros-linked network behind lawsuit attempting to stop Trump from deporting illegal aliens. This is all going to be able, you trace the money, you're going to get back to the federal government at some point, even if it's only part of the money. Then that means that you've linked the government to these NGOs that tells you that they're not NGOs. They're part of the deep state. Exclusive Pelosi's fixer at the Capitol Hill on January 6th, an unforgivable betrayal, friends say. That's a case that you ought to read. Judicial coup, radical left-wing judges. What is an insurrection? The act or instance of open revolt against civil authority or constituted government. That's what these judges are doing. This is an insurrection. That's also what the NGOs are doing with the attacks on Tesla and the swatting and the attempt to stop the deportation of alien enemies. It's a rising against civil or political authority or the established government, open and active opposition to execution of law in a city or state. The Democratic representatives are doing that. Have you been paying attention to what these people are saying? One of the gang, AOC's gang, came out and said, hey, we don't have to obey these executive orders. Everybody should just ignore them. That's insurrection. That's insurrection. Well, January 6th was an insurrection, Joe. No, it wasn't. It doesn't meet the definition. Those people were invited in by the Capitol Police to come in. They were peaceful. The only place where you had violence was where the cops started shooting at the crowd first, and the FBI operatives stormed the building and broke the windows to lead the crowd into it. That was a false flag attack. Everywhere else, it was peaceful. It was not an insurrection. Attorney General Pam Bondi calls Tesla attacks domestic terrorism. I go to this one, treason. This is a shocking background info into the anti-Trump Judge James Boasberg. Judge James Boasberg personally sentenced Kleinsmith. Do y'all remember him? He's involved in the framing of Trump and the Russiagate and all this other stuff. Wheeler explains he made sure that the FBI attorney Kleinsmith never saw the inside of a jail cell, even for a single day, despite the reality that Kleinsmith's attempts to overthrow the elected U.S. government via fake evidence and fabricated warrants that Boasberg's FISA court was totally fine with. In other words, Boasberg was part of that attempt to overthrow the first Trump administration. We now know that this is true. This is not a game. This is not hyperbole. This is true. This is the judge that did this. This is the same judge that is now trying to exceed his authority for the same end, to destroy Donald Trump. This is an open act of insurrection, and it's ongoing. And by the way, guess what this means? This means that if Kleinsmith were given a pardon, the pardon's not valid for him because the criminal organization, the criminal attempt to overthrow the presidency is ongoing. You can't pardon somebody for a crime that they are ongoing, continuing to participate in. It's not the way the pardon works. It has to be something that's done and over with. Which would mean that Fauci's pardon doesn't work either, because that stuff's not done and over with. Now here's the one that I posted. Let's see, let me get this one up. Second Amendment, we're in the Civil War. How no one sees this. And I put all of this together. This is actually a quick logical argument that we're in a civil war and that there's treason being committed. I'm not going to go through all of this one. A lot of this I've already shown you. The one I really want to get to is right here. This is the one I posted last night. And yeah, there's my little sign. The feces is about to hit the auxiliary rotarator. At least I sure hope it will. This all showed up yesterday after that Judge Boberg went nuts. Judicial coup and the Trump lawsuit. This video is very, very educational. General Mike Flynn on X. I link you to it. Winning a war requires operating at the speed of war. What did General Flynn just say we're in? War. Okay, so you don't think Joe, and I don't blame you. I'm just some talking head on a show that only reaches between 200 and 500 people a day. No big deal. No, I mean it. That's nothing. In the bloggist world, I don't have an audience. I'm just a nobody. I think General Flynn's a somebody. He just told you you are in a war. You're in a war. You're not in a political struggle. You're not in a legal battle. You are in a war. He used that word. He knows what he's talking about. He says, when I read this short piece down below, it made me believe we can actually win this very important and very spiritual war we're seeing waged in front of our very eyes. Oh, so it's not only a physical war, it's a spiritual war. Gee, sounds like I've been tracking with General Flynn here, doesn't it? This is operating at the speed the bureaucracy cannot stop. In other words, Trump does recognize we're in an asymmetrical war, and to some extent, he's fighting it accordingly. He's just fighting it with both hands tied behind his back. He's not using all the weapons the law gives him. General Flynn continues. He says, thus, we can never allow freedom's voice to be muzzled. Freedom is not free and requires great sacrifice to maintain. It is far more than a simple word to be thrown around loosely. Freedom is a measure of our humanity, our courage, and our determination. And speaking of courage, courage is a decision, but it only becomes contagious when one makes that courage decision to stand for liberty over tyranny. It is clear our nation's destruction is not due to overseas threats. It is principally due to our own complacency as citizens. Geez. You know what? I'm happy to say that I sound like General Flynn. I'll parrot behind him. He was a general. I was just a sergeant. I'll get in line. He's speaking what I've been speaking for over 2 decades, but good. Here we go. He says, why in this moment in history there is great hope and joy because of the excitement generated by actions of a historic leader in the White House. And he says that real Donald Trump. He continues, however, for our constitutional republic to prevail, for our institutions to not collapse from within, citizens must get involved, and to get involved wherever and however you can at a speed the government bureaucracy cannot keep up with. In other words, fight fire with fire. Do it peacefully, do it lawfully. Do you hear me? Peacefully, lawfully. Peacefully, lawfully. General Flynn continues, I implore those that read this to discuss with your families, your churches, your local clubs, your communities, and yes, even your elected officials, anyone willing to listen, that the time is now to recognize what many great leaders throughout our nation's history have warned about. And that is that our demise will not be from without, but from within. So I remind you, it will be through local action. As citizens, we are the ones to save the day. And not one man whose clarity of mission, purpose, and vision have set America upon the right tracks again for now. So it is time for each of us to do our part. And that is now to stand up, step up, and speak up. God bless America. Matthew 5:14. What was he responding to? Part of the story. We learned more about the unprecedented warp speed at which the team Trump is running, the Journal reported. A cybersecurity expert, meaning a hacker, had driven from Georgia to D.C. in the middle of the night at Doge request to help Doge staffers access the institute's computer system. Doge called in a hacker in the middle of the night? That, friends, is not the speed of government. It's not really even the speed of business. This is something completely different. This is the speed of war. You cannot fight entrenched administrative power with press conferences and think tank reports. You can only fight it by showing up in the middle of the night, locking the doors, and hacking the system. What we are seeing is a political shockwave. Amen, amen, amen. Praise the Lord. Pass the ammunition. In this case, the ammunition is more power to Doge. Says Judge Bonesberg accuses DOJ of evading its obligation. Blah, blah, blah. It's time for the Supreme Court to stop the judicial insurrections. Now, these are all different sources, too. This isn't all just Gateway. SCOTUS' refusal to rein in rogue lower courts has become a disturbing pattern. Judicial insurrection is worse than you think. Yeah, you ought to read that one. Oh, we've got to read this one, boys and girls. This is from the Gateway Pundit, but it's been reported in several other places. It says, revealed, Chief Justice John Roberts caught an elitist club of judges and lawyers. That includes James Boasberg, Beryl Howell, Emmett Mehta, and Kejani Brown Jackson, blah, 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 blah. What you find out is they're all part of a group, an organization, a club. It says the Supreme Court Chief Justice is holding meetings with far-left district judges who are running a judicial coup on the current president of the United States. That right there just disqualifies all of those judges from hearing these cases. If they are meeting to discuss these cases outside of their courtrooms and the jurisdiction in the trial, whoop, these are all now illegal. It says, just think, 2 days ago on Tuesday, Chief Justice Roberts released a statement attacking President Donald Trump for calling on these same crooked district judges to be impeached. And now we have evidence that John Roberts was in an elitist group in that with those same judges. Here is what Roberts said to the president. Skip that. So Bad Kitty Unleashed. This Bad Kitty. Well, she's just an it doesn't matter. That's what the general was just telling us. It's going to require every one of us citizens to dig down and go do what we can do. So if this person calling themselves Bad Kitty on X is capable of getting in and finding this information, verifying it for us and giving us the receipts, more power to her. You and I, our part is to spread this stuff everywhere we can. Make sure it gets into left-wing places. Start joining left-wing Facebook and X groups and make sure this stuff gets posted. Don't argue with them. Just post and run. Drop and run. Spread this stuff so other people can see it, so that there's a record that there are two sides in this battle. Don't forget the left is in an echo chamber. Sometimes the right is too. That's not a good thing. So who all is linked to this select and secretive club? And recall all of their negative Trump rulings. Judge James Boasberg, he's the president of the club. SCOTUS Ken J. Brown Jackson, vice president. Judge Emmett Mehta, secretary. Meetings are held in her court. Oh, they're holding these meetings in public courtrooms? That's a misuse of public property. Judge Beryl Howell, Justice Professionalism Award. Justice John Roberts. He's an honorary bencher of the Middle Temple. The list includes some of the most soulless and vicious judges in D.C. District Court. Wasn't it something else that Judge John Roberts broke ethical conduct and stuck up for his brother Boasberg? George Soros has funded a fellowship at the Middle Temple where John Roberts is a master of the bench. We've just linked Soros's NGOs now not only to the swatting, the Tesla terrorism, and to the court insurrection, now to the Supreme Court. First, let me very quickly explain how this secret society called the American Inns of Court came about. In the UK, they have the 4 Inns of Court. Oh, now we're right smack into the Fabians world. Dates back to hundreds of years. One of those is called Middle Temple. See Robert's photo. Well, the U.S. created the American version of this in recent decades. There's a massive list of branches. The branch many of our judges belong to is the Edward Bennett William, EBW, Inn of Court. It's so secretive, they deleted most signs of this branch from their website, although they still met. Now here's Judge Beryl Howell. She was nominated by President Judge Boasberg, and VP Kenja Brown Jackson approved of her nomination. Boasberg claimed it was her work on January 6th that contributed to his choosing her for the American Inns of Court Professionalism Award. This is all subversive, folks. This is what the founding fathers wanted the court. Oh my God. Charlie, get in here, please.
Oh my. Where'd you go? Oop, hold on. There we go. Stop. Let me do my job. There, now
Okay,
you're back in
you just
studio.
got done going through the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, correct?
Yes.
These secretive courts and things that are working as subversive elements were one of the things that the Anti-Federalists were most afraid of, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
And Hamilton said, oh, you don't have to worry about that because it'll never happen.
Human nature happens.
This is exactly, this thing I just read you is exactly what the Anti-Federalists told us would happen.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Everything they said has come to pass in spades. It's
exactly the way they said it would.
Yeah,
now this goes on. I'm
exactly.
not going to keep reading it, but this goes on for another page and a half, and then it brings you the America ends of court. It brings the receipts, folks. This goes on for several more pages. Go find this. Go to the blog page and start reading today. Ooh. Okay, Charlie, do you see now why I've been hopping up and down, hacked off lately?
Yeah. This is the emperor has no clothes.
Yes, exactly.
But the problem is nobody's seeing it.
They don't put the pieces together.
It.
And most of you in the audience, probably there's only one of you out there that I know has been listening to me for a while that has put the pieces together with me. He put them together. He understands that I'm sharing a personal expertise with you right now.
Yeah.
Okay, then you would be too, Charlie. If you see what I'm talking about right now, very veiled, very veiled. I'm walking a razor's edge right now. But if Charlie sees it.
Where General Flynn, when he was saying this is a spiritual war, oh my gosh.
Oh, I'm not even talking about this. It is a spiritual war. I'm not even, I'm talking about worldly affairs. Well, General Flynn saw what I saw.
Right.
He saw what he called this a war.
Yeah.
It is. And it's not just a spiritual war. It is. Don't get me wrong.
But it's physical as well. I mean, it's here. And it's all of what Woodrow freaking Wilson put together, and we're seeing the scaffolding come down now. And the thing is now that the scaffolding's down, we need to bip it.
Here's our problem. The spiritual connects Wilson to today. Man can't do that. That's the spirit. Right. That's the spirit of the age that's keeping us on focus. The reason nobody sees what I'm trying to show you right now is because they will not do one thing. Now, this is something that war gamers, military war gamers, and intelligence people, military intelligence people are trained to do. We're brilliant at this. Whoops. They're brilliant at this. What if? What if? What if this were real? What if somebody were actually trying to topple us from within our own government? What would it look like? Well, I would need to find this, this, and this. Oh, crap. Everything I just said I would do, I just shared it with you folks.
Yeah.
So, Joe, can you bring them into a courtroom and convict? No, I can't. But I dang sure can go stop them in other ways. This is no longer the proper jurisdiction of the courts. You are now into commander-in-chief's realm. You are in a second civil war, and nobody is treating it as such. If you're trying to fight a war, and you will not treat it as a war, you will lose. Oh, incidentally, all of the people we've been talking to are in China's pocket. China and Islam. Don't forget, in case you've missed it, you had Muslims outside the White House on their prayer mats condemning the United States for what President Trump is doing this past week. The Founding Fathers would have never tolerated that. The First Amendment is not for all religions.
Yeah, it is, Joe.
Really? Complete Bill of Rights, the drafts, debates, sources, and origins, edited by Neil H. Kogan. This is a copy of the congressional record. You see these little red flags? I've read these to you before. See? The red flags. Those are the places where the people who wrote the First Amendment said it was meant to protect all sects of Christianity. What? All denominations of the Christian faith and nothing else. Whoopsie. That's in the congressional record.
But Joe, we're not a Christian nation. It was built by Muslims. Barack Obama told us that.
Barack Obama is a liar. Okay. You can just hang out there for a minute, Charlie. Just in case you've got comments to make, I'm going to show everybody something else that I found. This is my personal X page. I'm not going to show you any metadata, but I've saved these pages. U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, turns out they got caught censoring the United States and the world. So this is a developing case. I haven't gotten into that. Laura Loomer, investigative reporter, she found out that we were still giving Secret Service protection to Hunter Biden, who does not deserve it. He's not entitled to it right now. And he is on vacation at American taxpayers' expense in South Africa. So she exposed it. President Trump ordered all of it pulled off of him. And 72 hours later, that order still has not been obeyed. The Secret Service cannot be trusted to protect our president. President Trump, I know you'll never hear me, but I strongly suggest you put the SEAL teams in charge of your personal protection for a while. SEAL teams and Delta Force, if you can't trust them, you can't trust anybody in this country. Just understand that they'll protect you a little differently than the Secret Service will. So here's another one for you. Chuck Schumer. We mobilized in New York. We have people going to the, let me see. Whoops, just hold on. Bear with me. This is a quote. This is from that NPR interview he did where he said that they put those judges in place. He says, we are mobilizing in New York. We have people going to the Republican district and going after these Republicans who are voting for this and forcing them to their face to change their vote or face the consequences. That's not the language of I'm going to beat you at the ballot box. That's the language of I'm forcing you to your face to change your vote. That's subversion, folks. He just admitted to committing treason. Why isn't he in jail? Why? I want to tell you, Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch, you have unleashed a whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hits you if you go forward with these awful decisions, Senator Chuck Schumer. That's the suspect in Kavanaugh assassination plot planned to target 2 other justices. That goes hand in hand with this. He is openly threatening people with violence. New York has, there's a couple of others. This is not all the cases, but let me dump that down. Okay. Now, one more thing I want to discuss today. Right now, what you are seeing is President Trump has kicked the deep state out of the executive. He's got some control over the legislature. There are some true blue MAGA people in the Republican Party in there. And at the very least, he's tamed the legislature. They're still fighting him. Don't get me wrong. But the last place where the deep state actually has any power is in the judiciary. If they lose this bid in the judiciary, they're going to go kinetic. They've done this in the past. And what do I mean by kinetic? And if you're reading the stories out there about this and you see that word kinetic, K-I-N-E-E-C-T, that's a military term. Charlie, what does it mean when I go kinetic?
Yeah, this is when you have these little lead objects flying through the air.
Yes, that's exactly what it means. It means they're going to use real violence, weapons. They're going to start killing people. Who remembers the Summers of Rage? The Summer of Rage. Who remembers that? That's right, Mr. Keeley. Kinetic is direct action. Lead chunking. That's right, Mr. Spikes.
Lead chunking.
Who remembers the Summer of Rage back in the 70s? In the 60s? Do y'all remember what was going on then? That was the Soviets trying to incite the youth to overthrow our government. And they used the Vietnam War to instigate that. That's coming again. That's where the Weather Underground come from. Those people are now in charge of your government. They're running the deep state. Remember, Bill Ayers said that he was unrepentant and wished he could have done more. Folks, those people never went anywhere. The communists in your government that McCarthy accused, McCarthy's been vindicated by history. He didn't accuse a single innocent person. This is serious. You are in a civil war. If you do nothing less, nothing else, start finding really good sites, posts, tweets, Facebook, anything and everything that has dug down and brought the receipts and spread it everywhere. Even if all you do is drop and run, the other side has to have a record in their feed that we were telling them they're being lied to, they're being manipulated, they're being used, and it has to be shoved in their face, not physically, but morally, that they have a choice to make. They are either on the side of righteousness or they are on the side of evil. There is no middle ground in this war. Not anymore. Righteousness is law and order according to the Constitution and the proper application of the original intentions of our laws, not the bastardization of them. Oh, Congress passed an ordinance that said this is a independently organization under the executive. That's all unconstitutional. That requires an amendment. They didn't do that. We haven't had a real amendment in forever because the progressives can't pass their amendments. You must stay peaceful. Defend yourself if necessary. Don't get me wrong. But you must stay peaceful. You must stay lawful. And you must speak out. Educate. Educate. It's what we're trying to do is give you the information you need to bring this to whoever will listen, even to those who won't. Get on their sites, their pages. Just drop these links and go. They may delete them. They may yell at them. Just hit in Facebook. Don't follow this thread. Don't react. Drop and run. Drive-by postings. If that's all we do. We lose this, we're done. Hydra will not allow itself to ever be attacked again. Ever. You'll get ranked voting across the country, and you will have one-party rule forever. And don't forget, the left has already laughed at us. Oh, he's a Christian nationalist. These people think your rights come from God. Have you read the Declaration of Independence, you laughing bat brain? And that was on, was it MSNBC or CNN? It was on one of those idiot channels. And oh, by the way, I watch Fox, when you're just as brain dumb as they are. Fox is just more sophisticated propaganda because the right tends to recognize truth and logic. So they have to be slicker at it, but they're just as bad. Did you see what Ingram did to the president in this interview this last week? That was insulting. She was very rude to the president. Fox is not your friend. The only place you have a friend now is in the independent voices of the media out there. Go find the ones that are actually trying to do true journalism the old-fashioned way. All right, Charlie, I've wound down.
Well, I got one thing, and it's too long for me to post in StreamYard, so I'm going to read this to you, and then you can respond. How's that sound?
Works for me.
All right, this is from Barbara Stratton. She says, George H.W. Bush signed the U.S. into the UN Agenda 21 in 92, right before he left office, and Bill Clinton advanced it into our government nationwide during his term, and it has continued to grow and invade. Rio Plus 20 was held in Rio de Janeiro in 2012, and Obama was told the U.S. was intended to be the leader, and it was his duty to get where were we? I lost my place here because I had to scroll. To get the U.S. in line to lead the UN Agenda 21/30, and it was generally advanced during Obama's 2 terms. but not as intended. Under Biden's term, they attempted to play fast catch-up. Trump will be in office into January 2029, leaving them just 2 years to get the one world government by 2030, which is already a 9-year extension of the original 2021 agenda. If they can't get the U.S. leadership toward one world government, we need to be watching to see what the country moves into leadership toward the goal now, 5 years out. We need to push our legislators to pass the current bill to get us, I think, out of the UN, and we need to stop the UN agent among us. The Chamber of Commerce systems that prevails, federal, state, and local governments, funds, supplies, our corrupt lobby system.
That's
Sorry,
all
that
part
was
of
long, but
no, that's all part of the Hydra. This is why I
yeah,
use the name Hydra. That's all part of the attack on this country.
yeah,
And
this
most
is
of it
all
is
part of the,
orchestrated from that's Carol Quigley, Tragedy and Hope, man. He told us all of this.
and this shows that this is not just the United States. This is bigger than the U.S. This is
This is what's going on in the EU. How many of you have been paying attention to the EU? They have people in the EU that are telling political candidates who are winning with the people, the right-wing candidates are saying you can't run. They're suspending elections. They're overturning elections. They will not allow the right to win. That's coming here if we don't stop this. Now, one of the things Trump is angling to do, and I'm starting to see signs on it, I think he's going to pull us out of NATO. Amen, amen, amen.
Yeah.
Okay, if he pulls us out of NATO, that's why he wants Iceland or Greenland or whatever the heck it is up there. He wants that because that's whoever controls that little nation controls the transatlantic crossing. If he controls that, that's strategic protection of the country. Nobody's coming to get us from Europe. So we've got that. You also have the fact that he has been starting to talk about getting us out of the UN. Trump may do that. If you're a war gamer, this is the end game. Do you remember part 1 of the end game when Dr. Strange told Tony, one way. Everything else is going to go bad. There's only one way this goes good. I've been playing these games out in my head over and over and over and over again, and I'm actually pretty good at this. I don't know if anybody else out there's paid attention. I'm actually pretty darn good at this. I've only seen one way that this goes well. They're going to try to kill President Trump.
They're
going to probably, but I mean, this is going to be a serious one.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to try to take out Vance along with him. I don't know if Vance is part of the deep state or not, but they can't, if he's not, they can't afford for him to take over. Because Vance might do what I've been saying.
Yeah.
What I've been calling for. Folks, you live in interesting times. You know what the other half of that curse is? And it's a curse. The other half is, may you always get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't get off our butts, we're going to get what we wanted. Because all that's necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Well, I'm telling you, a good man doesn't do nothing. The righteous man is good, and the righteous man does not remain silent in the presence of evil. So if you do, you'll get what you're asking for. Evil. Now, Charlie, did you say you're going to have a show Monday? Provided we still have
it provided we're still on YouTube. even if we're not on YouTube, I'll probably still push the show, and then I'll just upload it to YouTube once we get out of jail. But yeah, I am planning on doing one because I'm bumping up against my promise of doing one at least once a month because I was out of town and had some medical stuff going on and everything. So I'm gonna try to get that one out, and we will in the next month or so. Just a little teaser. We'll have a special guest on my show coming up, and that'll be interesting to see some different perspectives on things. So.
Deltros posted this comments. He says, this country is being attacked from all sides. Yeah. This is the seat of Israel. when the final battle of Armageddon is fought, everybody assumes it's going to be around Jerusalem. And it probably will be. But I'm going to ask you to consider something different. You are no longer in the physical land of Israel because the kingdom is not physical. The kingdom now, under the new covenant, is spiritual. Always has been. And if the kingdom is spiritual, and Yahweh claimed the whole earth as his, and Yeshua said that his gospel is the kingdom of Yahweh, the reclamation of all that has been lost. And this nation is, if we're correct, and this is the seat of Ephraim, this is Israel. And this is the seat of the new covenant. And the temple is the body. The third temple everybody's been looking for is the body of believers. So when you see Israel surrounded round about by unwalled cities, undefended cities, in the nation of Israel today, there is no such thing as an undefended city. In this country, there's not one defended city.
Right.
Be careful about what you assume you know about prophecy, folks.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm leaning towards now as I'm studying prophecy and seeing these things is we need to be looking at prophecy first from the spiritual perspective, and then we can look for the earth shadows as William likes to talk about, because I'm thinking, and I'm still got to investigate this further, that a lot of these prophecies that we have that we want to put them in physical terms are they're prophecy, and they are spiritual, and these things are happening and will happen and all this stuff. It's a spiritual war, and we need to look at it from that perspective, because a lot of these things like Armageddon and Gog and Magog, these may be spiritual wars and not physical ones that we see here. And it's talking about, there's one place where it talks about a million, 2 billion man army and things like that. That may be spiritual hyperbole, and maybe not even hyperbole. I don't know how many demons there are that are following after the lesser gods and such, but that may be what it's talking about.
Clay Toller asks, if God said that this is his planet, why does he allow Satan to rule it? And that's because Yahweh is lawful, and Adam ceded authority of the planet to Satan when he sinned in Eden. That doesn't mean that Yahweh's not going to take it back. He will. He just has to do it lawfully. And that's what the gospel's really about, the reversal of all of the things that Satan had taken away. Hopefully that'll answer your question, Mr. Toller.
And that's the other part of this too, is, we tend to look at these prophecies as one and done things. And what I'm learning as I'm going along is that a lot of these prophecies are cyclical, and they repeat themselves in different forms and maybe in different amplitudes. And that's something we need to look at as well. Things that have been, are, and will be.
Okay. Here's another thing. This is another, we're going to go long, folks. You're in your pew. You're in your pew. I'm pushing you. It's pew time. Okay. One of the things I have been looking at as of late is the wormwood, the burning mountain in the book of Revelation. Mountain's a kingdom. And I've always wondered about this mountain that strikes the waters. The waters are the mass of unbelieving people. Chaos. Poisons the fountain, the water at the fountainhead. That's the water of the gospel. And it poisons it at the fountainhead. That would be Messiah. And 1/3 of the world's people die. I had come across an understanding that wormwood was secular humanism. And I'm like, what's the explanation? Well, easy. It poisons the water. Now, we all read that. Oh, all the water is going to be poisoned. No. The water is the gospel. Isn't the gospel always referred to as living water? At the fountainhead. In other words, it does away with all religion. It's secular humanism. No religion at all. So 1/3 of us will become atheist. 1/3 of us in the world are apostate. 1/3 of us are nominally Judeo-Christian. That fits the pattern in Scripture. So if you have secular humanism, that's what the founding fathers set up. Now, it was guided by biblical teachings, but they set up a secular humanism. Okay, a biblically based secular humanism. And everybody asked, well, what are you going to do? And says, well, this is the great experiment. The founder said, this is, can man rule himself on earth?
Yeah.
In the Bible, you know, Yahweh set up Israel, said, here's my law. Run yourselves according to my law. Couldn't do it. Even when he was there with them.
Yep.
The founding fathers reestablished what they called this country New Israel. And they say, okay, we're going to set it up secular government according to the laws and, using Moses' guidance. And they're going to say, well, here's the experiment. Can man guide himself, rule himself? If we fail in correcting things under Trump, the answer is going to be no. So you can't do it according to Yahweh's way. You can't do it according to your way. Enough. You've had your chances. You can't do it with me. You can't do it without me. The pagans have proved you can't do it with false gods. Psalm 82. Done. Everybody, out the pool. I'm coming back. Gonna fix all this mess. You say, well, Joe, that's a really flippant way of looking at it. It's exactly what the lessons are in here. Once again, I'm a pretty good gamer. I've learned what the prophets have said, and I'm like, oh crap. When I compare that to human history, we are in the end game. See, the problem that we go ahead.
That's what, as I'm reading the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, these guys weren't prophets, but they were prophetic. Yeah. Not because they had some divine oracle or anything, but they knew human nature and they knew history. And they put those things together, and that's what we have.
They did the math.
We've got both sides of it too. You've got the different sides and stuff, but they were both right in their ways of, and so they knew exactly what was going to happen. It's just they were trying to build an institution that would
slow it down as long as possible.
And I think we're at the end of that rope, and we've got one chance here to, do a reset, if you will, to give us more time. Whether we will actually reset or not, if I go with human nature in history, we ain't gonna do it. That's
now, Charlie,
looking at that, if I'm going to be a prophet from that perspective, like the founding fathers, it ain't gonna happen. I mean, I hope it does, but I don't think it's going to happen.
You and Natasha know, and my wife BB knows, that I've been in a bit of a melancholy funk lately.
Mm-hmm.
Now you know why. I've already done the math that you just talked
about.
I'm not pessimistic because I'm a pessimist, and I'm not giving up. I just know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm expecting us to fail. We're not going to give Trump the support he needs. We've already got Republicans crying because some of Doge's cuts are affecting their districts. Everybody wants to cut. Nobody wants to bleed.
And there's a lot of this media hype, at these Republican town halls, and all these people crying about Doge and all this stuff and everything. And
nobody's crying about the criminals.
Yeah. And I saw a report, some survey saying that, like over 50% of the people disapprove of Doge, and only 40% approve of what he's doing.
Fake poll.
Go. Yeah. Go. I mean, keep on going. Cut. If they would just get rid of all the 3-letter agencies, we would be so much better. And, and we can actually, well, I don't know if we could get ourselves out of debt, but we could at least get to where we're running a surplus instead of a deficit, and, heal ourselves financially over time if we could keep it in place, because we just can't sustain what we've been doing.
No, we're bankrupt as a country.
We are, and our credit rating's already been downgraded. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to be bankrupt, and we're going to be Venezuela overnight. It's not going to take long.
And the ignorance of this country, people like with Social Security. I know we're going long, folks. You're free to go. Class dismissed. This is bonus time.
You guys,
Social Security. They stole my Social Security. I'm entitled to. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not entitled to a single penny of Social Security. You ever read that bill? Have you read the law? You're entitled to zero. Zip. Nada. None of it. Social Security has never had a lockbox. That's a lie. Democratic lie. Social Security has always gone into the general fund. Social Security was originally set up such that somebody might pay in $100,000. Well, back then, might pay in $10,000 over their life and draw $2,000 back. It was set up intentionally just to buy votes. It sounded good. It sounded compassionate and everything. It was just meant to buy votes and get money into the general coffers. It was a Ponzi scheme. And the law of Social Security, yes.
He was right.
Yes. The Social Security law does not guarantee you a penny.
It's a Ponzi scheme.
Not one penny. And it has to go bankrupt. It must. The demographics
it's collapsing
of this country,
under its own weight.
Yes.
Yeah.
As the baby boomers have retired and now the Gen X is going to start, it must go bust.
It's unsustainable.
You can't sustain it. Nobody will tell you that because they want to they want to steal their billions and retire before that pain comes. Trump, for all the things I've worried about with him, Trump is putting himself in the spot to take the hit over Social Security.
Yeah.
God, I can't believe I'm saying this. More leadership coming from that non-converted man than from any converted person that I've seen in a long time. Because I don't think Trump's converted. He hasn't bent his knee yet.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But I'm no longer willing
changed to a certain
I'm no
level,
longer willing to say that he's not wrestling with Yahweh.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I think he's in some kind of a struggle, but where he's at in that, it's hard to say.
And I've got all these people I see that claim to be Christians that are Trump haters. Be gone from me. I never knew you. I guarantee you that's what's coming. Because if nothing else, Trump is following the law. And Yahweh hates lawlessness. Even if it's law that goes against his law. Have you read Romans 13? Do you understand what Paul's talking about? Unless it goes against something on the 10 Commandments type of thing, you're expected to follow unrighteous laws.
Yeah.
Yeshua did. Yeah. He followed all the laws that Rome imposed on Judea. If he hadn't, the Romans would have crucified him.
Yeah.
Folks, anyway, I don't know how to make this any more apparent.
Yeah, you're right, Barbara. So, but yeah.
We're in a war. We're in a war.
It is.
And
where's your slide, Joe?
I don't have that one up and ready.
I know. I'm just joking with you, but Aaron knows what I'm talking about.
This is tearing at my soul, people. Mostly because of how many people are going to get caught so unaware. Even the people that are fighting this fight don't even realize they're in a war. Sometimes I feel like Biff. McFly! Hello!
Yeah.
Is anybody in there?
Yeah.
All right. Anyhow, Monday.
That's our frustration on this show is if, and this is my constant prayer to Yahweh, if we are on the correct path and, we're at least close to it, and I pray that if we're going off one side or the other, that he smacks us upside the head and, puts us back on the right path. Where are the people that should be listening to this? And the fact of the matter is, there's never going to be a great audience for this type of content.
Look at the numbers, Charlie. Look at the numbers on the show right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, we're down. Yeah. Because there's just not enough people that have the fortitude to listen to the truth, to study it, and then implement it in their lives. It's a sad fact. I mean, it's going to be a remnant, as the scriptures say, and it's a
that's
small
why I'm
remnant.
not optimistic.
And that's exactly right. But yeah, there you go, Aaron. Thank you for
Barbara's
posting
right
that,
too. Read the end
Natasha
of the
will.
book. God is
Yeah,
not
so
surprised or unprepared.
but there is good news in this too,
Hold that
because
quote up there. Keep that one up there.
because I think our hope is that there are going to be a few that will listen, that will find this, even if they don't come here, they'll find it elsewhere, because, even Cicero, like you said, found, human nature and, all that stuff, even though he didn't, directly find the Bible and Yahweh, it's still there. I mean, Paul even talks about that, how just observing nature, you see these things, but there will be that small remnant that will stand up. And, some of us may go to be martyrs, and some of us will be there fighting on the spiritual front in this warfare as the victory comes in. But that's the good part of the side, I guess.
So Barbara Stratton commented, she says, read the end of the book. God is not surprised or unprepared. No, God isn't. What
Right.
worries me the most, Miss Stratton, is that most of those people in his churches are going to be caught surprised and unprepared, because they follow the teachings of man, not the teachings of the scriptures.
Right.
They look for what man has told them in the scriptures, and they find it here in that little passage. I can twist this verse to make, and they put it together that way. But they don't swallow scripture whole, and they're going to get caught unawares. I don't want their blood on my hands.
Yeah.
I will warn at the top of my voice until my last breath.
Because if our understanding of the end of the book is correct, greater than 90% of the people that think they understand that book have absolutely no clue what that part of the book is talking about.
And it could
That's
be
if
us.
we're right. We could be wrong.
We could be part of that group.
We could be. And that's
But
why I say this, that's my prayer. If we're
I've
doing
never-
it right, if we're not doing it right, Yahweh, take this show down today. That's the way I feel.
I have yet to have anybody show me where my understanding has a hole in it yet.
Yeah.
And I've tested it. Oh boy, do I test it. And I invite people to try and poke holes in it. I've had to tweak it a little bit, but nobody's taken the foundation.
Frustration. I've actually challenged other people that say that they are all about truth and understanding truth and even teaching truth. And I present these points of view and they won't even look at them.
No.
That's what disturbs me more than anything, and I understand that, the unreligious, just a secular people not wanting to look at this. I understand that. But when we have believers and teachers that profess to want to know the truth and follow the truth, and they won't even look at these perspectives, I don't care if they agree with it. In fact, if they don't agree with it, I want them to come back to me and give me their reasons why they don't agree with it, so that I can look at those perspectives and say, oh, maybe you do have a point here, and maybe I was wrong in this way of looking at this, or maybe we're both right in the way we see this, because we're looking at it from different perspectives, because that happens too, and we can learn together. But I'm seeing that they're refusing to even do that, and that's why I'm kind of in this same funk with you as far as, what we've been talking about today was political. I'm talking about the spiritual side. That's the way I see this. And that's what
the
kind
truth
of depresses
is never
me.
Truth is never afraid to be questioned, Charlie. Yeshua is the truth.
Exactly.
He's the truth.
Exactly.
He never once ran away from questioning from the Pharisees. He met them head on.
Yeah. And
it's
man,
the lie
I wish
afraid
I could
of being questioned.
do like he does, because he was able to, boom, right there to the, ground point, and boom, with just a sentence, he blew them out of the water, and then walks away. It's like drop the bomb and walk away. But But that's the way truth is. Truth can stand up to that.
All right, folks, we'll wrap it today.
Yeah.
Thanks to those of you who have stayed with us.
Yeah,
this
thanks
whole
for
time.
sticking around. If you did, this was not scheduled, this part, but I think it was a valuable part of the show.
But at
if you
least
stuck
now,
around.
those of you that have been paying attention, now you know where the source of my melancholy is coming from. I've seen this coming for a long time. It's hard to accept that it's actually here.
Yeah, it's here. It's at our doors.
I've got a sense of surrealty that it was like that night before Desert Storm, the night before the ground war started. We had a pastor and he was preaching to us. We had 2 5-tons off to my right. We had just loaded 5,000 body bags on him, and he was off to the left, just at the foot of one of the 5-ton pickup truck. 5-ton trucks, cargo trucks. And there were 850 of us from the battalion surrounding him in a half circle, what we call a school circle. And behind him was the setting sun, black sky with a Crayola crayon red sun, setting sun shining through it. And there was just a sliver of the horizon where you could see the light, and the lights were coming down. Good God, it is straight out of the book of Revelation. And he told us all to hit a knee. And I saw 850 Marines take off their helmets and lay down their weapons and hit a knee. And he prayed over us. They had just told us that 80% of us were going to die within the next 24 hours. That was just a surreal moment for me that has been burned into my memory. I have not experienced anything like that since, until now. I've got a sense of peace about it. Don't get me wrong. Personally, I ain't worried about Joe. But I feel like I've been given the mission to reach whoever will listen, and I don't think I've done my job well enough, loud enough, hard enough. Fear of failure, failing my master. And knowing that when it comes right down to it, most people will run in any direction they think is going to give them physical safety, rather than in the direction that'll give them spiritual and eternal security.
Yeah.
I pray to Yahweh that when the time comes, He gives each and every one of you the strength to stand with Him and His Son, come whatever may. Thank you for being here. Charlie, I have a show Monday, continuing series on Mormonism. It's worth watching. It's doing very good. It's good stuff. Hope that you'll tune in. I'll be back next Wednesday. I will start talking to you about Passover and the feasts of Yahweh. Next Friday, we will have our class. Federalists 78 and 79. They're up on your homework. Just go to the blog page, theroadtoconcord.com. You'll find the homework. It's off on the left-hand column. Just click on it. If not, scroll down until you see the homework assignment. Or just look up the Federalists 78 and 79. We'll go over them next Friday. Next Friday should be our 500th show. Bit of a milestone. Until then, it's my prayer that Yahweh will keep each and every one of you and your families and your loved ones safe. And that you and those in your circle of influence will all turn to Him for your security, and not to man and not to government or anything else, but the only source of eternal peace and safety. We love each and every one of you. We thank you for being here. Yahweh bless. Shabbat shalom.